just as long as you stand by me.
That was beautiful. A beautiful film. It's called Stand By Me, and that's precisely what the film is all about. Of course, the main part of this film is about Gordy and Chris, which I think was absolutely wonderful. It's such a kind message that they're trying to get across, and I think it's just brilliant. Some extremely wonderful stars in this film. You know, you've got Will Wheaton as Gordy LaChance, and River Phoenix as Chris. I don't know who Jerry O'Connor or Corey Feldman are, but I've certainly seen them in something else, but I can't remember what. This film is only really about Gordy and Chris. You know, that's what it's all about, you know. The other two are sort of just extras in there. I hate Teddy. I think Teddy is one of the awful characters because he's so goddamn crazy. You know, he just like jumps in front of bloody trains and, you know, dives into water and things like this. I don't like Teddy too much. Vern is a character who I think is very confusing. You know, why do they even like him? It's weird. Why do they like him? He's like the outcast of the group. You know. But if I could take anything from this, I love those scenes with LaChance and Chambers. Absolutely, those scenes with them together, total beauty. The person who wrote that, no, I don't know who wrote it, but still, you know, very beautiful writing. You know, I know that Stephen King wrote it originally, but I don't know who wrote the film. That's the nice part about the film. You know, you've got LaChance and you've got Chambers, and they're just such good friends. You know, and you know they often have these little moments. You know, the other two go off somewhere, and they have their little moment. You know, talking about, you know, next year we're not going to be together, but I will sacrifice my future so that I can be with you, which is a really nice sentiment. And also, you know, they have rather emotional moments. You know, they both end up in tears. But of course, each of the fathers, I mean, they hate their children, all of them. I think Vern is the only one who's got a good father, or maybe he's yeah. Now, there's Teddy. Now, his father put his ear against the stove and completely burnt it. Chris's father is sort of like a drunken alcoholic who, you know, just spends all his life drunk and probably beats the child too. He is the punk, and so there's no chance of it. And the worst of the worst is Gordy's father, who literally just says, "I've only got one son, and he's dead." I thought that was horrible. I really did. You know, I love the fact that Gordy has these sort of moments where he remembers Denny. Beautiful moments. You know, he remembers his brother giving him a cap. He remembers his brother being the only person in the family who respects the fact that he writes stories. And in a way, Chris is Denny, in a way, because Chris is sort of trying to be there and being his brother, because, you know, for example, Denny is the only one who believes in his writing. Chris is the only person who believes in his writing. That's a nice feature. I love how Gordy's sometimes phased out. You know, everybody else is having their own little thing, and Gordy is the one who's just sort of like in his sad little world. Not sad, but, you know, sort of like really unhappy person, just sort of, you know, thinking about how his brothers died and things. And I like Chris, because Chris is this sort of like, I'll break up the fight, you know, sort of thing. And he's so kind to Gordy. You know, and there are scenes where, you know, you just want them to have a hug, don't you, really? That's what I wanted. You want them to have a good hug and say, you know, don't worry about it, man. I think they have about 4 or 5 of these meetings where they're just sort of like talking to each other. And there are 2 emotional ones. The one, you know, when well, it's hard to remember. I've only watched this film once. You've got to understand that. I've only watched it once. This is the first time I've ever watched it, so I may have bits of trying to remember it. There was a scene when Chris is saying, you know, I wish I could be somewhere where no one knows who I am. Very nicely, because, you know, everyone thinks he's a criminal, and he's probably not, you know. And so they have a nice moment there. And also there's a nice moment where Gordy, there's a moment where Gordy is sort of saying, well, you know, why is he gone? Why did he have to die? And they have a hug, and it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful, you know. Friendships like that don't exist anymore. You can't have a friendship like that anymore. No, it's impossible. Pure impossible. And it's nice to watch these things like this, and it's like, well, there is on television. Yes, on television there's loads of these sort of friendships. Merlin is a big example. Although Arthur is a bully, they have a friendship, a rather warped friendship, but they have a friendship, Arthur and Merlin. You know, and there are friendships like, what about Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen? Yeah, you know, the Fourth Doctor and Sarah. Wonderful friendship. So you have these sort of friendships on TV, but you don't get them, you know, in real life anymore, you know. I dream for the day when I can meet someone who is a real good friend to me, and, you know, the sort of friend you want to die for. Of course, I would do that for a few of my friends, but not all of them, you know. So I've always sort of dreamed of a world where I could have a friend who spent most of the time with me, and he'd be my best friend ever. And, you know, he'd be interested in the same things I'm interested in. Because I have friends who are like that, but they don't have my interests, you see. It's very hard to find someone who loves Doctor Who. Not many people do. They don't like the classic series. You can find them on the internet. Sure you can find people like that on the internet. But you need someone in person, you know, someone who's... I mean, if I were to create the perfect... I'd take a bit of Joel, I'd take a bit of Joe, I'd take a bit of David, I'd take a bit of Raven, I'd take a bit of Cameron, and I put them all together, and that'd be one part of them. Then I take a bit of Doctor Who, of classic, real good classic stuff, put that in there. Put a bit of I Want to Hug You in there, and put that in there. You know, hugging friends is a good thing to do. I mean, I always feel like, you know, when you haven't seen someone for a while, you hug them. Anyway, back to the film. And one of I think the best scene with Chris and I want to say Dougie, the best scene with Chris and Gordy is when there's that scene where he's just sort of saying, "Don't you dare, man! Don't you dare!" And it's sort of like because Gordy wants to go with the others to their sort of baby thick class, and Gordy can actually go on and do better things, but you know. Chris don't have this, he won't have that, no, and he just sort of says, "Don't you dare, man. You've got a future, you're going to be intelligent, you're going to be a good writer." And there's us, and we're just going to be thick and, you know, and do all that, which is a rather sad scene. And there's another really nice scene when, you know, Vern is talking a lot, and Chris just says, "Shut up, man," and then Chris is sort of, is being that father figure, and he's saying, "Well, you know what, let him tell us a story." And he's like, "Shut up, Vern, shut up." And he's really trying to encourage Gordy to feel good about himself and, you know, tell a story. The story is extremely graphic and disgusting, so I don't like that. That's the worst scene, of course. Something graphic and sick and disgusting is always a bad part in a film. Erased, that scene. It's not a terribly bad scene, it's not disgusting. Like that scene in Toy Story when he puts that thing up his nose. That's disgusting. But that bit with the sick isn't too bad. I can't stomach it. But the scene with the body, oh, it's horrible. Another nice scene with Chris and LaChance is when, you know, he says, "My father hates me. My father hates me." You know, and he's a disaster sort of thing. You know, and he sort of says. And I think it's the same scene as the one when they're talking about, you know, the future of them all. And he says, you know, "Well, I wish I was your dad, because I'd tell you, you know, to stop, you know, following their future and have your own future, you know." And he'd give him some encouragement. I think it's a beautiful scene. Of course, they've all got wonderful names, haven't they? LaChance, Chambers. The scene with Pressman. I thought that was quite a silly scene, you know. It's not very good, that scene. Because they've got a real fat man to play the part of Pressman. And the dog is obviously very stupid. I mean, it isn't a not very vicious looking dog, you know. If I were to, I would have put a bulldog or something there to make it look a bit more exciting. I hate the other gang. The other gang are just an irritant. You know, why are they there? Why are they in the film? I mean, I know it's probably in the novel, but it's very annoying the fact that they're there. You want to really focus on the friends. I mean, if I was to say anything, I'd say, you know, LeChance and Chris, they're friends, but the other two are just sort of there for no reason at all. Yes, they are friends, but you don't get that sort of strong friendship. There is a nice scene at the end when they've seen the body, and Chris tells them all to go and look for sticks to make a sort of thing to carry them with, and LeChance just sort of sits on a log looking sad, and so Chris says, "You guys go over there, and I'll have a chat with my friend." And they have a chat, and it's really nice, and you know, that's what friends are for, you know. It is a wonderful friendship between Gordy and Chris, and it's a very nice to see. It's a very nice film. I don't know what more. It's a wonderful film, absolutely wonderful. I shall definitely buy it on DVD when I get some money. Oh, there is one thing. The ending. Yeah, the ending is bad. I don't like the ending because it's very sad. You know, Chris tried to break up someone and he got stabbed in the neck. So that's a horrid scene. You know, you don't see that, but it's still not nice to think. Because Chris was a wonderful character and he just dies, you see. Vern, yeah, he gets married and has 4 children. And the other one goes into the army, and I think he dies or something. So yes, yeah, and the ending, of course, with Gordy's awful. Why the bloody hell did they pick Richard Dreyfuss, or whatever his name is, Richard Dreyfuss? Why did they pick him to do it? He's very old and very ugly. Shouldn't have picked him. You know, pick someone who's young and youthful, you know, or maybe someone who looks old but is still looks attractive enough to be. If you have not seen this film, go and watch it. It's a fantastic film. The train scene, I watched that twice because I watched it on YouTube in the morning and then now watch it again. Yeah, I love that train scene. It's good, and you understand why. But I don't understand what the comb's about. You know, why is the comb such a big aspect of it? I don't know. So yeah, and it is really sad they go off and they don't. I mean, you know, in the end, you know, Chris does go away, and he goes away and he becomes a lawyer of all things. And in the last 30 seconds, you know, it's sad that you know, LeChance and Chris don't meet for 10 years, and he dies, and you know, I think that's really horrid. You know, they're good friends. They should have stayed in contact, but of course they didn't. I knew there was something that I had to say, which was a really disgusting scene, and I just remembered what it is. There is a scene in which a leech crawls on LeChance's penis. Oh. I think every man in the room watching that was holding their penis and going, oh, just like sort of cringing and like, horrid. You know, this, and you see all the blood, and that is a very graphic scene. You know, I think they're all wincing and go, ugh, and he just faints, which is also very beautiful. You know, the fact that he just goes, because you would do that, I would do that if my penis was bleeding. I'm like, ugh. Fantastic film. 10 out of 10. I will buy this DVD. If you don't, you're very crazy. It's an absolutely fantastic film, full of love, friendship, and LeChance and Chris moments. Excellent film.